Hey, everybody. So I'm going to give it a second for folks to get on in here, and then I'm going to dive into this. And I'm going to go ahead and share with you that I'm going to be focusing a good portion of this broadcast on the incident in Rutherford County, Tennessee, as well as Rome, Georgia, more so than the other two court cases that are listed. That we're going to talk about. So I'm going to give it a second for folks to get on in here. What's up, Jamie? And then I'm going to make sure that I have this other information pulled up because it's what I'm going to be sharing with you. So so give me just a second. Okay. All right. So the title of this broadcast is, racism, systemic racism specifically. Yes. Yeah, they're right here. 1 second. Right there, baby. Hold on, y'all. Here. Oh. I am on tutu duty, as you guys probably know. And look, say hi, Heather. Hold on. They just were eating. Look. Say hi, Heather. She's got tacos all over her face. Hey, Jamie. Hey, Linda. Okay. All right, go get it, sister. All right, Tutu's gonna do her broadcast and then I'll be done, okay? So when I set this thing up, I really wanted to talk about, is systemic racism dead or alive and thriving, or is it taking its one last big deep breath? And part of what prompted it is the incident that happened last week with Gate City High School, right? And then there were other things that I found out about since then. But let me preface this whole broadcast by saying I have spent the better part of the last hour or so both reading the full ProPublica article on the judge in Rutherford County, Tennessee, and speaking actually with an expert witness for the ACLU who testified about the impact of solitary confinement upon children. And after both of those two things, I will tell you that I'm a little shook. I'm a little shook. And so I've decided to spend the majority of this broadcast talking specifically about these two things because I believe that they are super important and they involve children. Right. So a lot of times with adults, we don't seem to be able to agree on the way we should treat each other as human beings. Right. When it comes to adults, somehow there's this cognitive dissonance and we make excuses for things that we see that take place within law enforcement and within the judicial system. And my hope is that by focusing on these two things that specifically involve children, that we can come to a consensus. You could tell something was wrong. Yeah. And it's not really it is wrong. And I think what really has me shook is that the depositions and the investigation that went into the judge in Rutherford County and the fake law that she was using to lock up Black and brown children, like this investigation has been going on for 4 or 5 years, right? ProPublica reported on it. There was a, okay. So hold on. So breaking news, let me just interrupt and say this. The House committee investigating the January 6th Capitol insurrection votes unanimously to hold former White House aide Steve Bannon in contempt of Congress. So Steve Bannon is being held in contempt. It was a unanimous vote, which I think is very important. I got to share this real quick. So, in contempt, unanimous vote. All right. So as I'm reading this stuff, and I want you guys to bear with me because I am going to be reading a lot to you all tonight because it was so much. I went through, how normally I'll go through like several articles and I'll pull out little bits and pieces. Yeah, it's a very serious thing right now. And so I'll pull out like the highlights and the bits and pieces. But to be quite frank, I couldn't do that. I really truly feel like this is most impactful if I share the majority, if not all, of this report for you. Hey, Linda. And I will ask you, I very rarely ask you all to share a live. I'm going to ask every single person to watch who's watching to share this live. Because it's really important that people understand what's going on. So what I was saying prior to that news alert coming was that this investigation, thank you, Leslie, this investigation was going on 4 and 5 years ago. They did depositions in 2017, right, of this judge and of the staff and of police officers. And what strikes me and really kind of angers me, if I'm being honest, is that it wasn't the depositions or the investigation or the ACLU involvement. It wasn't any of that that made the governor's office in the state of Tennessee take notice and do anything about it. Like nothing happened to these people. When I share this information with you, I want you to keep in mind that nothing happened to these people. And it wasn't until this past Friday when it made national news because one of the reporters, journalists for ProPublica did a thread on Twitter about it, and it got shared over 90,000 times. That Twitter thread being shared over 90,000 times is what finally garnered enough outrage publicly that the governor of the state of Tennessee felt like he should issue something saying that this needs to be investigated. This is what I detest. This is what I detest. So when journalists bring things to the public light and they go viral on social media or they get shared a lot on social media, hey, Daniel, we tend to get demonized sometimes for being the ones to shine the light. And yet, time and time again, what is proven is that without this bold, glaring light, little to nothing gets done. And that is what is disheartening for me. That is what makes me angry. And that is what really, for me, draws the attention to the fact that it's a systemic issue. I'm going to read to you some of this information before I dive into the Rutherford County, Tennessee issue, which is where I'm going to spend the majority of my time this evening. I still have resources being sent to me. So, and this may go into Thursday night as well. This may go into Thursday night as well, because like I said, the individual that is sending me like document upon document upon document right now is an expert witness who has worked with and testified for the ACLU in cases like the one I'm going to share with you tonight. And I took notes ferociously as we were talking earlier, and there's just not enough time for me to give it to you tonight. And I feel like I don't want to rush it. So I really do want you all to bear with me if this goes into Thursday night. Okay. I also will tell you, I am already emotional just from reading the full story, not the little news snippets, not the little freaking headlines, not the little stuff that's showing up on TikTok or in your reels, but the actual full report by ProPublica. But before I dive into Rutherford County, I want to talk to you very briefly about a situation that just took place last week in Rome, Georgia. So in Rome, Georgia, there is a high school, Coosa High is the name of the high school there. And recently, a couple of white students at Coosa High came to school carrying Confederate flags and allegedly hurling racial slurs out of a car window. Okay. Kind of reminds you of blackface and racial slurs, right? And a couple of black students filmed these white students with this Confederate flag, and they were upset for a couple of reasons. A, they're not allowed to bring Black Lives Matter flags to school. They felt like it was inappropriate for this racist flag to be at the school grounds, and nothing happened to these white students. No discipline occurred. So several of the students decided that they were going to plan a protest, a peaceful protest on the opposite side of the street of the school for last Friday. And the administration got wind of this planned protest. And on Thursday, it was either a parent or a teacher provided a recording of the announcement that the school made. But the school administration got on the intercom on Thursday and said, listen, we are aware of this protest that you guys are planning. And we are going to let you know that we're not going to tolerate unrest on school grounds. Police will be present. And in case you're wondering about First Amendment rights and things like that on school grounds, so what has been determined, largely the acceptable guidelines, is that to keep the peace on school grounds, right, from civil unrest, that tops your First Amendment rights on school grounds typically. So here's what happened, though. These students were invited to come to the office to talk to the administration about this planned protest. And so they went. I believe 4 of them were Black and 2 of them were white. These students go into the office and they begin this discussion with the administration about this planned protest. And the students get emotional. And a few of them, they even get loud because they are upset that the school is trying to prevent them from peacefully protesting, and yet the school did nothing to protect them from this racist gesture and these racial slurs that they allege were being said to them by these students carrying the Confederate flag. So as you can imagine, these children are a little emotional and a little riled up. Here's what's important. Of the 6 students that were in that room talking to the administration, 4 of them were suspended. You care to guess the racial ethnicity of the 4? The only students that were suspended were the Black students. The white students even were interviewed, and the white students said, I was just as loud as these other students. I was just as emotional as these other students. But yet I was not suspended. And the white student said, it's because I'm white. Yeah, it is outrageous. So I'm going to give you all, I like to give you all the links to the article. So I'm going to give you this first link is before the suspension happened, but I'm giving you this link because it has the video of the students with the Confederate flag at school, because that's what first happened, right? Next, I'm going to give you the actual link to the story where the students were suspended. And they claimed that the students claimed that they brought the Confederate flag because it was Farm Day. Like, I don't know, is Farm Day synonymous with Plantation Day or what, right? But this is a parent is who provided the announcement from the school intercom that happened. And Lillian Huckabee said, all the African Americans, they suspended them and they didn't suspend them. She was pointing to the white and Hispanic students. So let me just explain too. There were white and Hispanic students who chose to skip school in protest, and none of them got in trouble. And so Lillian Huckabee said, they didn't suspend me and I was yelling and loud. She said, it's because I'm white. So I'm going to give you this article as well so that you have it for reference. Right. So this happened in Rome, Georgia. And in the title of this broadcast, I talked about this incident with students in Rome, Georgia, the Ahmaud Arbery case, it's actually the Travis and Gregory McMichael case for the killing of Ahmaud Arbery is happening. And then in Tennessee, we have this issue with the judicial system in Rutherford County. And then we just had blackface and alleged racial slurs at Gate City High School, which is actually like right over the border into Virginia. So I want to focus on the children tonight, though, because I think it's incredibly important to take a look at the way that school systems and the legal system are traumatizing our BIPOC children. I agree with you, Sylvester. I agree that the Confederate flag is anti-American. I believe that, I agree. You're literally against America, just like the original traitors who went to battle it. I agree. Right, Daniel. And that's why I'm specifically talking about systemic racism. And let me just prepare you all. I'm going to tell you, I'm giving you, this is your trigger warning right now, because we're going to dive into the Rutherford County issue right now. So I'm just letting you know to be prepared. Okay. All right, here we go. And like I said, I'm going to be reading because there was just so much, and I honestly did not want to dilute the potency of what transpired by just taking snippets. I just believe it's worthy of a lot of attention. I'm also going to play some audio that's included in this from depositions that were done. So let me share this with you. Okay, so this article is from ProPublica, and I'm going to give you a link, and you can read along if you would like. Yes, Martina, everybody's been asking me, was I aware? And I have been aware, but I just hadn't had the space or the bandwidth to read all the way into it. And like I said, the ACLU was involved in this case, and I actually talked to one of their experts with regard to the impact that some of this would have on children. Okay, so here is the link to the full story published on October, I believe it was the 8th, by ProPublica. Yes. All right, so here we go. All right, folks. So this is the headline. Black children were jailed for a crime that does not exist. Almost nothing happened to the adults in charge. Judge Donna Scott Davenport oversees the juvenile justice system in Rutherford County, Tennessee, with a staggering history of jailing children. She said kids must face consequences which rarely seem to apply to her or the other adults in charge. Again, this is a ProPublica's reporting. So this goes back to April 15th, 2016 at Hobgood Elementary School in Murfreesboro. So the first thing I want to say is that, did you hear that I said this is not a high school or a middle school? This is an elementary school. Elementary school. 3 police officers were crowded into the assistant principal's office at Hobgood Elementary School, and Tammy Garrett, the school's principal, had no idea what to do. One officer, wearing a tactical vest at an elementary school, was telling her, "Go get the kids." A second officer was telling her, "Don't go get the kids." The third officer wasn't saying anything. Garrett knew that the police had been sent to arrest some children, although exactly which children it would turn out was unclear to everyone, even these officers. The names the police had given the principal included 4 girls now sitting in the classrooms throughout the school. All 4 girls were Black. There was a 6th grader, 2 4th graders, and a 3rd grader. The youngest was 8. She was wearing pigtails. A few weeks before, a video had appeared on YouTube, and it showed 2 small boys, 5 and 6 years old, throwing feeble punches at a larger boy as he walked away, while other kids tagged along, some of them yelling. The scuffle took place off school grounds after a game of pickup basketball. One kid insulted another kid's mother, and that's what started it all. Yes, people should know that Rutherford County is right next door to Nashville. Yes, this is literally, it's like what, 20, 30 miles, it's like 20, 30, it's like 30 minutes outside of Nashville. Okay. It's a video of a 5 and a 6-year-old that has us here. The police were at Hobgood because of that video, but they hadn't come for the boys who threw the punches. They were at the school for the children who had looked on. The police in Murfreesboro, a fast-growing city about 30 miles southeast of Nashville, had secured juvenile petitions for 10 children in all who were accused of failing to stop the fight. I believe the law that they gave them was criminal responsibility for conduct of another, which is not even a crime. Officers were now rounding up kids, even though the department couldn't identify a single one in the video, which was posted with a filter that made faces fuzzy. What was clear were the voices, including that of one girl trying to break up the fight, saying, "Stop, Tay-Tay, stop, Tay-Tay, stop, Tay-Tay." She was a fourth grader at Hobgood. Her initials were EJ. The confusion at Hobgood, one officer saying this, another saying that, could be traced in part to absence. A police officer regularly assigned to Hobgood, who knew the students and the staff, had bailed that morning after learning about the planned arrests. The thought of arresting these children caused him such stress, he feared he might cry in front of them or have a heart attack. He wanted nothing to do with it, so he complained of chest pains, and he went home with no warning to his fill-in about what was in store. Also absent was the police officer who had investigated the video and instigated these arrests. Her name is Crystal Templeton. She had assured the principal that she would be there. She had also told Garrett, that's the principal, that there would be no handcuffs, that the police would be discreet, but Templeton was a no-show. Garrett even texted her saying, "How's timing?" but got no answer. That's because instead of going to Hobgood, Templeton had spent the afternoon gathering the petitions, and then she headed over to the Rutherford County Juvenile Detention Center, a two-tiered jail for children with dozens of surveillance cameras, 48 cells, and 64 beds. And there she waited for the kids to be brought to her. In Rutherford County, a juvenile court judge had been directing police on what she called our process for arresting children. And she appointed the jailer, who employed a filter system to determine which children to hold. She was proud of what she'd helped build, despite some alarming numbers buried in state reports. So among cases that are referred to juvenile court, the statewide average in the state of Tennessee for how often children are locked up was 5%. So in the state of Tennessee, the number of times that a juvenile child is actually locked up is 5%. In Rutherford County, that number was 48%. Almost half the time. And you're telling me no one noticed? Wait till you hear how long she's been the damn juvenile judge. Tennessee used to publish statistical reports on juvenile courts statewide, but they stopped doing that in 2015. The last year available for data is 2014 for all courts. And that's when they determined that Rutherford County had locked up 48% of the cases. How about that? Let me keep going. I know that this is a lot that I'm reading to you, but there's a reason why. There's a reason, so just stick with me. In the assistant principal's office at Hobgood, the officer telling Garrett not to get the kids was Chris Williams. Williams, who is Black, had been a Murfreesboro cop for 5 years. What in the world, he thought, when he learned what these arrests were about. At Hobgood, 2/3 of the students were Black or Latino. Williams wondered if such arrests would be made at a school that was mostly white. He had a daughter who was 9. He pictured her being arrested. This is going to blow up, he thought. I'm going to end up in federal court over this. He considered quitting, but instead he tried to get someone to intervene. Tucked in an office corner, he called a sergeant, a lieutenant, and a major, but couldn't find anyone to call it off. The officer saying nothing, the officer who didn't say anything, was Albert Miles III. Growing up, Miles, who is Black, had friends who hated the police, but his dad was a cop, so he wanted to prove that police could be trusted. That afternoon, Miles had been pulled out of roll call along with another officer. A sergeant told the two to go arrest some kids at Hobgood. The sergeant didn't say why, but at Hobgood, Miles started picking up the details. He too wondered if these arrests would happen at a school full of white students. Here's where I got pissed. Stay with me, y'all. And I told you this would be a little rough. So let me get going. The third officer at Hobgood was Jeff Carroll. He'd been pulled out of roll call with Miles. Carroll, who is white, was a patrol officer and SWAT team member. So they pulled a SWAT team member to go arrest these children at the elementary school, wearing his tactical vest. In evaluation, supervisors praised him as a leader, quote unquote, cool under pressure. He also had no idea what these arrests were about, but his sergeant had ordered them and he followed orders. He was the officer telling the principal, go get the kids. So let's be clear. 2 Black officers, one saying, don't go get the kids, one not saying anything, and the white officer saying, go get the kids. Garrett, remember that's the principal, asked if she could call their parents first. Carol, the white officer, told her no. Garrett told the police that one girl had diabetes and she got treatment when she arrived home after school. Please, she said, let me call her parent. On this, the police ultimately compromised, saying that the girl could get a shot in the nurse's office before being taken to jail. Of the 2 officers telling Garrett what to do, get the kids, don't get the kids, Carol seemed the more aggressive, the principal said later. She agreed to get the kids. I'm going to skip this part. As Garrett gathered the girls from their classroom, she believed the police would at least avoid a spectacle. School let out at 2:30. That was minutes away. Her understanding was that the police would keep the girls in the office until school was dismissed and everyone else was gone. When she rounded up the 6th grader, a tall girl with braids who had visions of becoming a police officer, one of the 4th graders, the girl with diabetes, and the 8-year-old 3rd grader, in the hallway, the principal tried to prepare them, saying that the police were there regarding a video of a fight. Hearing this, the 6th grader told Garrett that the other 2 girls hadn't even been there. After returning to the office with the 3 girls, Garrett relayed to the police what the 6th grader told her. Her words were barely out when Carol, the white officer, made it clear he'd had enough. Garrett said later when interviewed as part of an internal police investigation, Carol pulled out handcuffs, put them right in my face, and he said, we're going now. We're going now. There's no more talk, and we're going now. And I said, but. Carol yelled at her, Garrett said. She felt intimidated, bullied. She worried that if she said any more, she might be arrested. And she said, quote, and so I backed off. By now, these little girls were crying and screaming and reaching for the principal, who was also crying, as was the assistant principal. And it was awful, she said later. Carol handcuffed the 6th grader. Later, when asked why, he said because policy allowed him to. After being handcuffed, the 6th grader fell to her knees. Miles handcuffed the 8-year-old with pigtails, just acting out of habit, he said later. Walking to a patrol call, he stopped and thought, wait a minute, and removed the cuffs. I guess my brain finally caught up with what was going on. While Carol drove those 2 girls to the jail, the 4th grader with diabetes stayed behind to see the nurse. She was sisters with the 6th grader. Her initials were CC. Y'all doing okay? Are y'all doing okay? Okay, I'm going to go back. In all this back and forth, Principal Garrett realized something. The other 4th grader, she'd forgotten about her, and now school was out. The girl had boarded her bus and was waiting to go home. The other fourth grader was EJ. Although she'd said stop in the video, she was on the police list to be picked up for encouraging the fight. Go get her, the police told Garrett. Garrett was still crying. She didn't want to go out to the line of buses and let all the kids see her like that, but she went feeling she had little choice. A teacher beckoned EJ off the bus, and then Garrett escorted her inside to the awaiting police. EJ, scared and confused, begged for her mother and then threw up on the floor. The two fourth graders still at Hobgood, EJ and Cece, were best friends. Williams and Miles walked the girls outside, not handcuffing either. With some parents joining in, the officers formed a prayer circle around the two girls. Miles prayed out loud for the kids to be protected and for God to bring peace and understanding. And then he buckled the fourth graders into a patrol car and drove off. On the way to jail, the girls cried, snot and all, EJ would say later. Garrett, meanwhile, pulled out her personal cell phone and began calling parents, no longer willing to do as the police commanded. For the officer, the confusion didn't end at the school. It continued once the children began arriving at the jail. When Carol walked in with the first two girls, Templeton, that's the investigating officer, remember, pointed to the 8-year-old and asked what she was doing there. The police had no petition for her, Templeton said. The 8-year-old's mother soon arrived and took her home. Yeah, sorry guys. I know. I gave you a trigger warning. So just, this is important because you just cannot convince me that this would happen at a white school. Miles brought in the last two girls, the two fourth graders, and then one walking out to his patrol car, he ran into an angry parent. Miles would recall later. It was a father demanding answers. Miles dropped his head, shaking it. The father asked why this was happening. I don't know, Miles answered. We are good people, the father said. I can only imagine what you're feeling, Miles answered. He explained briefly the juvenile court process. Remember, that's the one determined by the judge. This is wrong, the father told Miles over and over. And after the third time, Miles, the officer, fighting back tears, said he understood, as a parent himself, the father's anger and pain. Fuck you, the father said. I understand, Miles answered. Only later, when he returned to the police station, did Miles allow himself to cry. What happened on that Friday and in the days after, when police rounded up 11 even more kids, would expose an ugly and unsettling culture in Rutherford County, Tennessee, one spanning decades. In the wake of these mass arrests, lawyers would see inside a secretive legal system that's supposed to protect kids, but in this county did the opposite. Officials flouted the law by wrongfully arresting and jailing children. One of their worst practices was stopped following the events at Hobgood, but the conditions that allowed the lawlessness remain. The adults in charge failed, yet they're still in charge. Tennessee's systems for protecting children failed, yet they haven't been fixed. Keep in mind, this was 2016. This is now 2021. So 5 years later, how many more children? Judge Donna Scott Davenport is who we're talking about. I don't know. I tried to update this so that I could grab this for you. Give me 1 second. Okay, cool. So I'm going to be able to show her to you. Kimberly, I agree. When you say you can't imagine the trauma those kids will have from this, me either. And she still sits on the bench. Correct, Martina. Correct. Of course, she's white. Yes. So give me 1 second, and I am going to give you this. Okay. So This is the judge. Oh, she deserves more than 1 year in jail for every child. Let me just tell you that. Here we go. I'm pulling this for you guys. So this is Judge Donna Scott Davenport. This is her. And this is her during a 2017 deposition. She looks real worried, doesn't she? She's not. And so sad this happens all over the place. Yeah, it's not isolated. And that's why I want to talk about, when I speak about systemic issues, she does look hateful, doesn't she, Misty? And I hate to judge by that, but she does. Okay, so let me pull this back up for you so I can keep going. 11 children in all were arrested over the video, including the 8-year-old taken in by mistake. Media picked up the story. Parents and community leaders condemned the actions of the police. Keep in mind, this is all 2016, folks. Media picked up the story in 2016, right? Listen at this. 3 state legislators actually said it was unconscionable, inexcusable, that it was insane. A Nashville pastor said it was unimaginable, unfathomable, right? We are in a crisis with our children in Rutherford County. I've never seen it this bad, right? But that is what she had to say about the state of the youth. That's what she said to a local TV station. We are in a crisis with our children in Rutherford County. I've never seen it this bad. Rutherford County established the position of elected juvenile court judge in 2000. And ever since, Donna Scott Davenport has been the job's only holder. She sometimes calls herself the mother of the county. She runs the juvenile justice system, appointing magistrates, setting rules, and presiding over cases that include everything from children accused of breaking the law to parents accused of neglecting their children. While the county's mayor, sheriff, and commissioners have all turned over, she has stayed on, becoming a looming figure for thousands of families. She's been the judge ever since I was a kid, said one mother whose own kids have cycled through Davenport's courtroom. One man, now in his late 20s, said that when he was a kid in trouble, he would pray for a magistrate instead of Davenport. Quote, if she's having a bad day, most definitely you're going to have a bad day. While juvenile court is mostly private, she keeps a highly public profile. For the past 10 years, she's had a monthly radio segment on WGNS, a local station, where she talks about her work. She sees a breakdown in morals. Children lack respect. Quote, it's worse now than I've ever seen it, she said in 2012. Parents don't parent. Quote, it's just the worst I've ever seen, she said in 2017. On WGNS, she reminisces with the show's host about a time when families ate dinner together and parents always knew where their children were and what friends they were with because kids called home from a landline, not some could be anywhere cell phone. Video games, the internet, social media, it's all poison for children, the judge says. She describes her work as a calling. Quote, I'm here on a mission. It's not a job, it's God's mission, she told a local newspaper. The children in her courtroom aren't hers, but she calls them hers. Quote, I'm seeing a lot of aggression in my 9 and 10-year-olds, she said in one radio segment. She encourages parents troubled by their children's behavior to use over-the-counter kits to test them for drugs. Don't buy them at the Dollar Tree, she says on the radio. The best ones are at your reputable drugstores. This is her talking in 2012 on the radio. I'm going to make sure I turn this up so you can hear her.
I've locked up one 7-year-old in 13 years, and that was a heartbreak. But 8 and 9-year-olds and older are very common now.
Did y'all hear that? I need to play it again. I had to listen to it 3 times myself. Listen to what she says.
I've locked up one 7-year-old in 13 years, and that was a heartbreak. But 8 and 9-year-olds and older are very common now.
She has lots of favorite sayings. Quote, God don't make no junk. That's what she says to instill self-worth to the children. To instill fear, she says, I'm going to let you be young and dumb one time. There's no jury in juvenile court. So Davenport decides the facts as well as the law. And this is what she says, quote, and that is why I should get 12 times the pay. She likes to joke. She has a strict dress code in her courtroom, requiring people to show deference. There will be no untucked shirts, no sundresses, no spaghetti straps or spandex, no body piercings, no uncovered tattoos. Pants shall be pulled up, and if a child shows up without a belt, the judge keeps a bag of them. And if she runs out, you'll just have to make do with a piece of rope. She says children need consequences. This is her again.
I mean, being detained at our facility is not a picnic at all. It's not supposed to be. It's a consequence for an action.
So we're talking about babies. We're talking about babies, and she says it's not a picnic. I'm not talking about freaking San Quentin. It's not Rikers. These are babies. So, you know, in the late 1990s, there was a movement to reduce the number of children that were being locked up. Okay. This county, Rutherford County's high detention rate goes against a reform that started back then, where everybody else in the nation is going down and the rest of the state, Rutherford County continued to go up. On the radio, she says she's been blessed with an extensive history in law enforcement. Quote, I was trained well in 17 years by different law enforcement agencies. And as a juvenile court judge, she says she can spot subtle signs of gang activity, wearing something to the left or to the right, or a color here or a color there. So apparently she's Miss Cleo in the courtroom. But her description of her job history doesn't always match her employment records. I'm going to skip this part because you guys have it. There's another part that I really want to get to. In 1998, she became a juvenile court referee akin to a judge. One of the county's judges appointed her. Asked why, he recently said, I really can't go back and tell you. The following year, after she was appointed as a juvenile court referee, Rutherford County violated federal law 191 times by keeping kids locked up too long. 1 year after she was appointed, Rutherford County violated federal law 191 times by keeping kids locked up too long. By law, children held for such minor acts as truancy were to appear before a judge within 24 hours and be released no more than a day after that. The Tennessean interviewed Davenport, who estimated half those violations occurred because a kid had cursed her or someone else. For cursing, she said, she typically sentenced kids to 2 to 10 days in jail. For cursing at her, 2 to 10 days in jail. This is what she said, and I quote, was I in violation, she said? Heck yes. But am I going to allow a child to cuss anyone out? Heck no. In August 2000, less than 3 months after the Tennessean ran that story about them breaking the federal law 191 times, Rutherford County elected her to the newly created job of juvenile court judge. Her opponent, a major in the sheriff's department, was later charged with sex crimes against minors and in a plea deal got probation. Davenport has not had another opponent since. So when the Murfreesboro officers arrested the kids at Hobgood, they were following Davenport's process, which is arrest, transport to the detention center for screening, then file charging papers. It is so ordered, she wrote in a 2003 memo about her instructions. 4 years later, she declared that even kids accused of minor violations like truancy must be taken into custody and transported to jail. She told the Murfreesboro Daily News Journal, "I know I'm harsh. I'm very harsh. I like to think I'm fair, but I'm tough." Y'all still with me? Y'all okay? Let me come over here and check on y'all for a second. Yeah. Okay, so here we go, because I got 15 minutes. In 2016, the Tennessee Board of Judicial Conduct publicly reprimanded Davenport. In a family law matter, a father's attorneys had asked to move his case to another county. By law, they were allowed to. But Davenport called, quote, the father and or his attorneys a, quote, sneaky snake, the reprimand said. What's more, she ordered that a transcript of her words be forwarded, possibly tipping the next judge to her animosity. The reprimand found that Davenport's intemperate conduct threatened the right to a fair hearing. And in some other cases, appeals courts have taken Davenport to task through unusually blunt language. In one, Davenport was overturned twice. Davenport, finding that the mother had neglected her daughter, granted custody to another couple. Two higher courts disagreed and ordered Davenport to reunify the mother and the child. Instead, she terminated the mother's parental rights. The other couple then adopted the girl after being exhorted by Davenport to move quickly, according to the State Court of Appeals opinion. She declined ProPublica's request for an interview, to which they attached 13 pages of questions. Previously, when asked about the county's arrest practices, she told lawyers that she can't tell law enforcement what to do. But you remember she did, right? So, God, there's so much. There's so much, you guys. This is going to go into Thursday, okay? So this is the part I'm going to skip. I'm going to skip chapter 3 because I need to get to chapter 4 because I need to drive home a point. When police took, well, shit, I can't. It's kind of hard. Okay, so let me just back up. In chapter 3, this charge is questioned. So this is Friday, the April 15th, 2016 that we were still talking about. On the same afternoon that the 3 police officers, right, arrested those kids at Hobgood, Crystal Templeton, the police officer investigating the video, wanted to arrest every kid who watched the fight and, quote, get them all in front of Davenport, she would say later during an internal investigation, right? So they went in search of another charge. So get this, Templeton thought an appropriate charge might be conspiracy to commit assault. But yeah, no. They told her, no, you can't. The only child that could be charged with that was the one who recorded the fight, right? So they went looking for another charge for these children. They checked the state's criminal code on a computer. Templeton had joined the Murfreesboro Police Department in 1998 when she was 21. By the time of these arrests, she'd been disciplined at least 37 times, including 9 suspensions. Did y'all hear me? She'd been a police officer since 1998 when she was 28. By 2016, when this happened, she'd been disciplined 37 times and suspended 9 times. She once left a loaded pistol on the seat of a patrol car. She failed to turn on her dash cam during a pursuit. Another time she lost control of her patrol car and hit a Ford Explorer, which hit another car and whatever. Yeah. In the lead up to these arrests, the school's principal had heard grumblings about Templeton. She was a school resource officer, not at Hobgood, but at 2 other schools in Murfreesboro. Both schools' principals complained that she was often absent. Meanwhile, one of Hobgood's resource officers warned Garrett, the principal, that Templeton's handling of the case was going to, quote, cause a shitstorm. But there we go. So remember that we have EJ, that's the one on the video saying, "Stop, Tay Tay," right? The victim, the boy being punched, told Templeton the kids were all friends now, as kids often are, right? She said she understood. And then she asked the child, "Do you think that there needs to be some consequences for what happened?" And he said, yes. Like he knew that meant you were going to take him to jail. But anyway, so they went all the way to the Judicial Commissioner's office, and they discovered an alternative to conspiracy to commit assault. Her search turned up a Tennessee statute defining criminal responsibility for conduct of another. And it says, in part, a person is criminally responsible for an offense committed by another if the person causes or aids an innocent or irresponsible person to engage in the offense or directs another to commit the offense or fails to make a reasonable effort to prevent the commission of the offense. So that's what they decided to charge, right? When she says when she subsequently appraised a higher up in the police department, the higher up wasn't so sure, but he didn't want her off. No one ever said no, she said. If somebody had told me no, stop, I would have stopped. Okay, so in the United States, it's typically the prosecutor's job to review a police investigation and decide what charges, if any, to file, right? But Tennessee allows counties to hire judicial commissioners to fill this role. Holy geez, listen to this. From issuing warrants to setting bail to conducting probable cause hearings, Rutherford County's judicial commissioners can take on tasks that traditionally fall to judges or prosecutors without needing the legal training of either. County judges recommend people for the job and county commissioners appoint them. There's a good old boy system. They open the job to anyone with a Tennessee driver's license and a high school diploma, supplemented by some college level coursework or vocational training and some office work. That's it. I'm going to skip this part because there's something that I want to get to. So listen, on Saturday, the day after the scene at Hobgood, police went to the home of a sister and brother who were 12-year-old twins. In court records, they would be identified as JB1 and JB2. Officers arrested and handcuffed both 12-year-old children, even as the girl cried and begged to stay with her mother. And the mother pleaded with the police not to use handcuffs. The mother recently said, "It hurt my heart. It hurt me to my heart for them to take my kids." 2 of her children watched the arrest, as did 3 of her nieces. So all of them traumatized. Afterward, her other children had nightmares of being arrested, she said. The officers put the twins in a patrol car and took them to the juvenile detention center. When police took the 12-year-old twins to Rutherford County Juvenile Detention Center on Saturday, April 16, 2016, the odds that either would be jailed were long, at least under Tennessee law. Recognizing the harm that can come from incarcerating kids, Tennessee lawmakers have placed narrow limits on when a child accused of being delinquent can be held in a secure lockdown prior to receiving a court hearing. The child must fit one of 6 categories that are precisely defined. They include being a jail escapee, being wanted elsewhere for a felony offense, or being accused on substantial evidence of a crime resulting in serious injury or death. These 2 12-year-olds were charged on negligible evidence with a crime that's not an actual crime for something in which no one was seriously hurt. Rutherford County, though, had its own system for determining whether to keep a child under lock and key. Its written procedure, imprecise and broad, boiled down to whether a child was considered by jailers to be a, quote, true threat. Jailers allowed the 12-year-old girl to go home, but they locked up her twin brother. Immediately, I'm angry because they target Black boys all the time. Of the 10 children charged in this case, all Black. 4 were girls, 6 were boys. Every girl was released. Of the boys, 4 were jailed. Those 4 boys became a small part of a big group. In the fiscal year that encompassed April 2016, Rutherford County jailed 986 children for a total of 7,932 days. In the fiscal year that encompassed April 2016, Rutherford County jailed 986 children for a total of 7,932 days. I'm almost to the part where we're going to have to stop for tonight, but give me 1 second. This is the part I want to get to. JB number 2, the 12-year-old boy, spent 2 nights in the detention center, court records show. While there, he was placed in solitary confinement as punishment for standing at his cell's window, a lawsuit would later allege. ProPublica recently interviewed JB number 2, whose name is Jacorius Brinkley. He's 18 now, and he's okay with his name being used. A guard, Jacorius said, kept walking past his cell saying, like, you can't be by the door. You got to sit down. The person who runs the detention center is Lynn Duke. Davenport initially picked someone else, but her first appointee was arrested on a drug charge only hours after receiving the congratulations of county commissioners. Davenport quickly named Duke as the replacement. Duke, a former youth services officer, became director on January 1st, 2001, and has remained in that role ever since. Duke reports to Davenport, but does not consult her daily. In 2005, Duke emailed the judge to say she was feeling guilty for not checking in more. If you need me to do anything, in all caps, please tell me, Duke wrote. To which Davenport replied, girl, if I had any concerns or problems you would hear from me, you do a great job. I want to talk about they had these children shackled together in orange jumpsuits, shuffling along the sidewalk and into the judicial building. Y'all want to see Lynn? Hold on, I'll show you Lynn Duke. All right, so this is Lynn Duke. This is her in the 2017 deposition. So I'm going to show you what she looks like. So that is Davenport, the judge, and this is Lynn Duke. And these are the women locking up almost 1,000 Black and brown children and children in Rutherford County. I want to go back to JB though, because y'all heard me say that JB was in solitary confinement for 2 days. So you heard me also say that I spoke with someone who was an expert for the ACLU in cases like this. That person sent me a lot of documents, which I will review between now and Thursday when we come back to this case and we talk about it some more. But first, I want to tell you that the United Nations did a report. Let me give you the link. The United Nations urged the United States of America in 2014 to, quote, prohibit any use of solitary confinement against juveniles. In the most updated report, which was March of 2015, the special reporter who did this report describes the continued use of solitary confinement on children in the United States as a form of torture. That it should never be used as punishment, and that if it's used at all, it should be very brief, and it should only be for reasons of safety. So we know Jacarius was in solitary confinement for 2 days. Let me give you this link. So what I would recommend, Sherry, is contacting Governor Bill Lee's office as of this past Friday, only because it went crazy on Twitter with like 90,000 shares. Let me read to you what Bill Lee said as of Friday. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee's office released a statement on Friday, October 15th, asking judicial authorities to conduct a review of Rutherford County Juvenile Court Judge Donna Scott Davenport. Quote, "We are concerned about the recent reports and believe the appropriate judicial authorities should issue a full review," the governor's official office said in an email. But get this, quote, "All criminal charging decisions are made within the judicial branch." So in other words, he's already telling y'all he don't intend to do shit. All criminal charging decisions are made within the judicial branch. Whatever. I don't like him at all. I also want to point out this one thing before we go for tonight, because I feel like this is a lot. Stop telling BIPOC people that there's no such thing as systemic racism. Stop telling us that. Stop telling us that the system does not work against us and our children. Stop telling us that our children aren't targeted. Because 986 children in one fiscal year were locked up in Rutherford County for almost 8,000 days total. Yeah, so Brandy, I've talked about Khalif Browder before. Khalif Browder went to prison at Rikers on an unfounded allegation over a stolen backpack for a witness that they could never produce, that had actually left the country, that couldn't properly identify him, because he refused to be in the program, which is something that Rikers Island guards had in place, which is where you either join the guards and be a snitch and do things for them, or the guards don't protect you and they let the gangs beat you up. And because Khalif Browder refused to join a gang or join the program, he was targeted by both gang members at Rikers Island as well as the staff. As you all know, Khalif Browder ended up committing suicide after he was finally released after spending 3 years there. Barack Obama did an executive order that that solitary confinement could no longer be used in Khalif's honor. To drive this point home, I want you all to understand something. There are actually rules governing animal research. So there are certain species of animals that are social animals, right? The health and well-being of the animal depends upon their ability to be in a social environment. We know that this doesn't apply to like turtles or snakes probably, but most mammals fall into this category, including human beings. So if we were all conducting a research, let's say we were all researching animals right now, there are regulations and rules and guidelines that forbid us to put animals involved in a research project in solitary confinement. And if you house them in solitary confinement, you are required to submit information to the governing bodies explaining why you chose to do that for animals. Rutherford County, Tennessee was doing this with Black and brown children for a law that does not exist, that is not a crime. They were putting handcuffs on children that were 7, 8, 9 years old. They were putting a 12-year-old in solitary confinement because he stood on his bed to look out of a window. It was 2016, and Rutherford County, Tennessee was treating Black and brown children worse than animals, as if they were less than animals, as if they were 3/5 of a fucking human being. Babies. It's our babies. I don't know how we fix it. What I definitely know is that it must be fixed. Because if not, it is going to explode. That's my honest opinion. So Thursday, we'll come back and we'll talk about this some more. I need a breather. I need a breath. I don't know if you guys feel that way, but this is a lot. You want to know what you can do. I would say you've got to be loud and got to be vocal, and you have to call out your legislators. You have to, we have to start paying attention to who's being elected. It's great that you vote in the primary, but do you vote in the other elections that take place? Do you vote in the elections when it comes to who your judges are and who your DA is? Do you pay attention? Do you, look up the actual reports on them? Do you find out if people are being reprimanded? Are you paying attention to those people that are in positions to enforce, or in this case, make up laws? Because that's what is required. That is what is required. And I know that it's a lot because, we have regular life going on, and sometimes it just seems like one more thing. Like, how in the world can you keep tabs on every single thing that's going on? And the answer is you can't, right? But there are some things that we have to pay attention to, and this is one of them. So, where are you going, sissy? I know, Martina. I'm going to share with you guys more on Thursday. Careful. And we'll get into it a little bit more then, because it has to stop, right? I think about Dominic is 7. He's about to be 8. And this could very easily, I think about, Dominic in Hawkins County. Holy geez, right? You sleepy? So anyway, we'll talk more on Thursday. But yes, more people need to share and be aware. I gave you the link to the full ProPublica story. Shout outs to ProPublica. They are always phenomenal in terms of independent reporting. Yeah, I reached out to them a couple of times for ballad. The unfortunate thing about our protest and when it was happening was the news was consumed by Trump. And so it was very hard to get a good news cycle to pay attention because there was so much going on nationally all the time. You know, had what we did, had a small rural community collected 30,000 signatures and taken them to Congress and gotten the ear of the FTC and had a 257-day protest that was outside and a almost 2-year protest total, it would have been newsworthy, right? It was newsworthy. But we were battling big giants, right? So it just is what it is. So, but shouts out to them for a fantastic, phenomenal job. It didn't let me try this link one more time because it didn't let me post the link to the UN report. I'm going to try it one more time, guys. One more time. Whoops. Let's see if it posts this time. Okay, it looks like it did. Okay, great. All right, folks, I'm out of here. I know that it was a lot. Deep breath, take a bath, wash off the gook, burn some sage, light a candle, do whatever you need to do to be okay. Great. I'm glad you guys got it. I will see you all here Thursday at 8 p.m. Thank you for staying with me. I know this was really heavy and it's necessary. So I'm out of here. You guys be amazing. Be light, be love. Peace.